You have to look a little harder and think a little deeper about the legacy. And that's something we take really, really seriously and we think about right from the start. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lifestory's first podcast and welcome to Taylor Place in Dorking, where we're filming from. I'm joined today by Adrian Caddy from Greenspace. Greenspace and Lifestory, as I'm sure you'll hear in a few minutes, have been working together for many years in terms of our marketing and our branding. And it's great to be joined by him today. Adrian, welcome. Thank you for coming down to Taylor Place in Dorking and having a chat.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Actually, we've known each other for, I think, 7 years.
7 years it is, absolutely.
I think when we first met, as we were getting to know each other, you explained actually that you hadn't always been a home builder. You started out in the army. Isn't that right?
That is right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
And how did that experience inform this business that we're in?
Well, I left the army in 2001, so some time ago now. But I think the key thing really is that the army is all about people when it comes down to it. And I've been working in teams all my life, and it was great to be able to move into an industry, development industry, building homes, which is also about people. And obviously it's about the people who build the homes, but probably more importantly, it's about the people who will one day be living in those homes. And I think sometimes as well, it's forgotten by our industry, but the people who live in the community that those homes are being built in. So there's always a community in place already. And sometimes it can be a bit frightening for that community to have a development on their doorstep. And it's really important as developers that we engage with the community and we listen to them and we're respectful of their views and opinions.
And I remember very well you telling us, or telling me anyway, a story about somebody that had told you that it's not the buildings that will remember you, it's the people. And that, I think, helped really to focus us on the idea of the service that you were intent on providing to your customers and the wider community, as we started working together on the definition of what this new brand, which we ended up calling Anthology, should all be about. We called it Stories of Homes, and because we were based in London, built from London. And it was really all about trying to distill the idea of the focus being on the life of the person that's going to live in the home that we create, as opposed to maybe the more traditional way that the industry goes about representing its products to people, where the focus is really on the building or the brickwork or the architecture.
It was always about the service, and you picked up on that pretty quickly. Providing a service to people and a service culture, and an absolute focus on the customer as opposed to anything else. And when I remember when you presented Anthology as a brand name, it took us all back really, but it was a complete no-brainer. It made perfect sense to the whole team, and really, that was the start of our story together, but also the story of the company as well.
Well, I think for us, our focus is always about what we call the legacy that we're trying to create together with our clients, and in this case with you. And it requires us to sort of think towards the end of the story. Think about what's the legacy we're trying to create, and what do we want it to be remembered for. And when we went to research the sector and try to find out who does what and what are the sort of the standards that we have to exceed, we noticed that a lot of developers tend to, or have a tendency to get very excited about telling you about their buildings.
Yeah, that's true.
Which I suppose is understandable. It takes a lot of time and trouble to build anything as beautiful as this place, for example. But not so much time is spent talking or thinking or giving a kind of a platform for the people whose life stories are going to be spent living in those places.
I think that, right from the start, the two teams got on really well because legacy for us is a huge thing as well. And actually, I met you just after having worked on the Olympics, where I worked in the team that delivered the Athletes Village. And, the legacy we were leaving there was blindingly obvious. And I think sometimes you have to look a little harder and think a little deeper about the legacy that you're going to be providing for people to live, and obviously the communities that are already there. And that's something we take really, really seriously, and we think about right from the start. And you're right, it came right through into the name Lifestory itself. And Lifestory was an amalgamation of two businesses, effectively. So we had Anthology, obviously, to start with, and Anthology and a business called Pegasus Life. They were backed by effectively the same investors. And I was in the fortunate position where I could bring both companies together and form Lifestory, again, another name that Greenspace had come up with, which was a fantastic reaction. And a reaction really to the fact that we found ourselves in a great position where Anthology, on the one hand, was building almost starter homes for people who, buying their first homes, really. And Pegasus were very much focused on retirement and later living, and looking at people who perhaps were downsizing from family homes, and really exciting to be able to provide homes at both ends of I suppose, life spectrum. But in all cases, the life story of the people that are living in those communities, shines through. And again, the name just stood out as something that made, real sense to everybody within the team.
Well, it's good to hear, because I think the name Anthology, obviously, it means a collection of stories. Yeah. And it seemed to fit and be quite apt, because the strategy, or the brand strategy, the legacy idea for the business, before we had the name, was stories of homes, in the case of Anthology, built from London, built in the city, in high density areas, usually sort of areas that are requiring regen, and it seemed to fit and feel quite apt. And I recall the first location that we went to look at was a redundant trading estate in Deptford. Yep. But on closer inspection, we started to notice some carved headstones on some of the decrepit buildings, but also manhole covers and street names that all talked about a business that had been there and really shaped the fabric of the area around metal foundry. And that gave rise to the idea that, so the story of this place is about a foundry. That's its legacy, and that can then be the basis of a new stories and bringing new life. So Deptford Foundry was the name that we gave to that place, and then following on from that, 6 or 7 further really wonderful sort of story-based locations, and that set a pattern and a strategy in place that everybody started to feel confident about. That could then play through to the way that we would actually go out and market and sell new homes in those places to people who never maybe visited the area before, and it would bring some kind of coherence and a friendship, if you like, with the people who lived maybe all their life in the area, where they would understand the context of the story, and those two parts come together. And that I think, when you talk about how a business like yours creates communities, that seems to be the place where that story plays out.
I think it's a great example. I mean, I think it's celebrating the history of the place and what's gone on there previously, and helped to, I think, make sense of that particular example. And we've done it for so many more now going forward, to the community that were there before. I think it's respectful on a level, and I think that rings true and then becomes authentic to the existing community, and then it makes it so much easier to build the homes and for new people to be able to move into the area. So it's something we always like to do. And as you know, we try and do it very early as well. So it almost then makes sense of what we're building to all of the subcontractors and consultants and all of the, the various sort of interested third parties that are working on this project, all of our supply chain, which I think sometimes as developers we don't always get that right. So actually, being able to articulate that really early, made sense of it for everybody, and then it makes it so much easier, I think, for us to flow through to what is our cause. And this is what's true, I think, for Anthology and Pegasus and the whole of Lifestory, is we've always had a focus on customer experience. I mean, that has been the complete, our complete being within our DNA, actually woven into everything we do, is trying to make sure that, we can exceed a customer's expectations, to delight them, if you want, which is a word I know you came up with. And what a great target, what a great ideal to have as a company, and something that all of us here at Lifestory absolutely buy into, and something we've been very proud of in terms of some of the response that we've got. You raised Deptford earlier on, and the response we've had on Home Views, which is it's a peer review platform, has been fantastic and really good to be able to, I guess, set our stall out, and then 6 or 7 years later to actually see that what we aimed to achieve had been achieved. But obviously no complacency. We've got to continue to do that as well.
I think for us, one of the things that's exciting about Lifestory is the fact that it now has a UK-wide
absolutely.
Focus. So instead of just looking at London or urban or city locations, you're looking at rural locations and even, really sort of far-flung areas.
So, I mean, just last week I was in Jesmond for Pegasus Jesmond Assembly, which is fantastic. And, there's another site that we're talking to. It used to be a school, hence the name Assembly, and that looks brilliant, and sits really well within the existing community, and there's this existing fabric of the city, and we're very proud to be up there. And we've got aspirations really now to be all around the country. So we already have a huge spread from Falmouth, Wilmslow, Newcastle, Brighton. So Bath. So we are a company which is growing and spreading our wings, which is very exciting.
Yeah, and I think the strategy, the stories of homes created for living now, that embraces, as you said, people buying a first home, to people potentially buying a family home or downsizing from a family home to a retirement type of home. It's really interesting to see. Actually, this is a strategy that really can embrace all of that and maintain us on that path towards creating that legacy we set out to achieve.
Absolutely. And I guess the most exciting bit is that, we can work with local planners and local politicians and local communities to try and understand what's needed in terms of housing, and then to provide the best mix of housing for that particular location. So it doesn't necessarily have to be all retirement, doesn't necessarily have to be all open market housing. I think we'll find, a number of opportunities where we might be providing affordable homes and open market homes and retirement homes as well. And that's great because communities aren't homogenous. They tend to be quite mixed and diverse. And to be able to play a housing mix into that as well, and to build on, the homes and the community that's already there, I think is, again, pretty exciting for us as a company.
So looking forward then, one of the big trends that's happening and playing out across all sectors is the shift from ownership to the idea of subscription in some sectors, or in the case of homes, people call it rental. The business didn't set out to rent homes; it set out to build them and sell them to people who'd like to own them outright. What does this sort of shift as an economic trend and a social trend mean to you as a business, and how do you think the business needs to transform itself to to meet the challenge?
That's a great question. I mean, the first thing is that we've not invented this. Rental's been around for, millennia. But what we can do is react to what's happening. And obviously, I think your question's really sort of directed towards the retirement part of the business, where we are seeing rental as an increasingly common social phenomena. And I think it was happening anyway. And we had already reacted to it. And I think what we're seeing is with the pandemic and the reaction to coronavirus and the restrictions that we've all been living under, and several other social factors as well, we're seeing that kind of later generation who are looking to downsize, just considering how they might like to live in whichever home they choose. And often ownership is not certainly not the only answer, and rental is becoming increasingly attractive. So again, we're not setting the pace in this. We're just listening to what our customers are saying, and we're reacting to that. And your question was around, what's the commercial model like? From our perspective, we just want to leave the choice of how our customers live in their homes to them. So, we're here in Taylor Place in Dorking, and it looks fantastic. We want customers to come down to see the homes that we built, to fall in love with them, and then to decide how they want to live there. If they want to purchase, that's great. If they want to rent immediately, that's great. If they want to rent with a view to purchasing later, then that also is something that we can facilitate. And again, I think occasionally there can be a certain amount of arrogance from an industry perspective, and I think we have to really move beyond that and leave that choice up to our customers, to listen to them and to respond to them. I think it's really exciting. I think you pick one social phenomena there. There's several that the pandemic has accelerated, and we're really excited to see where that particular one leads in the next, over the next few months as we come out of lockdown, but over the coming years as well.
I think one of the things we've noticed is that when we set out on the journey that we've been on together, it was, like as we said earlier, to set a new standard in customer service. As the business has evolved and now embraces all, the whole life stage, all life stages, one of the focus on after moving into a home care is something new, and it's actually something quite differentiating, because a lot of property developers' model would be about finding a site, developing that site, marketing the homes, selling them, and moving on. But when you build a place like this, for example, the providing care in the form of what we call a life host to the residents or the members of the community here is a really important function, and one of the reasons why people would choose to come here in the first place. And that then becomes an idea that can then extend back to the kind of hospitality, for want of a better word, that we could think about providing to people buying the first home in an urban location. So Lifestory becomes more than just a service provider; it becomes a host.
Yeah, no, I think there's lessons that can be shared in both directions, and from a retirement perspective, we provide independent living, and there are many different sorts of later living and retirement products, if you want, or homes that people can choose to buy into. We're very much on the independent living sort of side of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not service driven. And I think you're nailing it really with the hospitality term. And our life host, acts as a conduit for the community. There is a certain amount of building management that needs to be done, which is really kind of a hygiene factor, I guess. We've got to look after the buildings that people live in, but they're there as well to encourage and facilitate the community and to help it to grow. And that's exciting. And you're right, all of a sudden, what we do now is not product, focused. It's more service focused. And the product is just a part of of what we do in the homes we build, but actually the community becomes that much more important.
Yeah. So how do you feel our legacy is looking? Are we on track?
I think it's looking pretty good. I mean, I'm proud of the relationship that we've had, and pleased to be able to call you a friend as well as someone that I work with, a colleague. I think that what we set out to do, we've achieved. But again, I said it earlier on, no complacency at all. When you put service as that focus, you have to have that front and center of your mind the whole time, and it's a relentless task to ensure that we maintain that focus. And I think we're only as good as our last customer interaction and the last development that we purchased. That's been a really interesting chat. Thank you for coming in and grilling me a little bit. It's been great to chat again, and I'm sure we'll do so in the future. And to everybody, thank you for listening. Hopefully you've found that interesting, and I look forward to being able to introduce other topics and talking to you again in the future. Thank you.